made me puke. Why?
But
How?
what?
Worst movie, no matter what.
Oh, well, hold on now. There are way better
There's
candidates.
so many.
Bad casting, scenes were abruptly cut, directing, don't quit your day job, bad movie.
Oh my gosh.
But his day job is directing.
Can we get arrested for punching someone?
It is
Yes,
assault.
probably, but
That
not
is-
this person.
That is assault.
That was a 1-star review from IMDb. Hello and welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series and films. I'm Ryan, joined as always by Andrew
Greetings.
and Steven.
Can you imagine that you're like in court after punching this dude? You're just like, Your Honor, here's a printout of his 1-star reviews on IMDb. And the guy's like, tell you what, let me get down and get this robe off. I want to hit him too.
No, he just hauls off and pow, like right in the witness stand, just hits
He
him.
just throws his gavel.
Yeah, kapow, gobble, gobble, gobble. And in
Like
this
one of those
episode,
turtles
That's
from
not the
Mario.
That's not
The Hammer Brothers.
Sound, that's not the sound gavels make.
Kapow, kapow.
That's
Gavel, gavel,
that's a
gavel.
30 Rock reference where Liz Lemon goes to court and the judge lost his gavel and he goes, gavel, gavel, gavel. And
Yeah.
everybody looks at him and he goes, sorry, I lost my gavel this morning.
I got it. But
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
And like 2 other people listening did.
Oh, man.
What? That's implying that a lot of people haven't watched 30 Rock, which you should.
I feel like it's an old show now.
It is an
It
old
is an
show.
old show now because you're old, but it was very popular.
All these
when it
hip
was out.
Gen Z kids that listen to our podcast are like, whatever, old man, that's a boomer show. It's a great show.
Are they
though.
Shaggy? Is it Gen Z?
They are-
Shaggy?
it's both.
Whatever, old man.
Gen Z's way into Scooby-Doo. Trust me, guys. I'm with the teens
Probably
all the
are.
time.
Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. Okay. If you can't tell, obviously we're
We
reviewing
haven't
The
told you.
Holdovers, starring Paul Giamatti and directed by Alexander Payne.
Really? There's no other starring people in this film?
I mean, there's a bunch of other people, but that Paul Giamatti's the biggest actor, I'd say, by far.
He is the big name.
I mean, sure.
I'm going to do the plot summary and the whole cast.
I'm
Calm
going to do the plot
calm
summary
down.
and the whole thing.
The backseat podcasters over here.
No, I'm pretty sure we're front seat.
We're all three in the front
microphone.
seat,
That makes
and
us
you're
the
trying to
front
grab
seat.
the wheel, and I'm like, I'm driving here. All right, so a cranky history teacher, Andrew Knuckles, at a remote prep school is forced to remain on campus over the holidays with a grieving cook and a troubled student who has no place to go.
I would be a pretty grouchy history teacher.
So you
Yes, you would.
you should have done
Ancient history at that.
The
Yeah.
grouchy history teacher is yourself, and you're stuck on campus with us.
Oh, that is.
Oh, God, no, please.
Yes,
No.
I'm the grouchy teacher, and you sweat hogs are in the back of the class.
That's another old reference.
That was from Welcome Back, Cotter.
It was.
everybody.
I've
actually
That's
never seen
Of
Welcome Back,
course you
Kotter,
haven't.
yeah.
It's from the 70s, Andrew.
From the 70s.
I barely saw it in reruns, and I'm
movie's
old.
right?
From the 70s, but not really.
It is.
barely know that reference.
Steven got it. My fellow old got it. All right. So this movie was released October 27th, 2023, theatrically. It was directed by Alexander Payne, who you probably know from Sideways, that also starred Paul Giamatti and Thomas Hayden Church. That was the wine movie. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
one.
It's a good movie. It came out 04?
Yeah, 04, 05, early 2000s.
It's good film.
It's pretty good, yeah. It's similar to this in some ways. Like, it's a character
Gotcha.
drama.
Character drama.
He did Election, and then he did Nebraska, and there's a bunch of other stuff.
I can't say I've seen any of those.
I haven't
I've
seen
Sideways.
Election or
That's about
Nebraska.
as far
I'm
as-
aware.
I haven't even heard of these titles, so
You might, if you saw a trailer, be like, oh yeah, that
probably,
movie.
yeah.
But you
Yeah.
probably didn't, watch
Yeah.
these, obviously.
wow.
Well, you just said you didn't.
I don't know.
It's like a safe bet.
I
not
just
even-
felt some slight in there.
Well, I've only seen Sideways. I haven't seen Election or Nebraska, but
Gotcha.
I've heard they're both good. It's just,
Yeah.
put it in the pile
Sure,
of things
yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
seen
Yeah.
yet.
There's a lot of media.
Big problem.
Right. It's a big world, everybody. Written by David Hemmingson, who this is his first feature film.
Was this adapted from anything?
No.
Okay, just straight out.
Yeah.
All right.
He's done lots of TV. He did like American Dad episodes, How I Met Your Mother, Hercules, the Disney TV show back in the day. So he's basically done a lot of television, and then this.
Kevin Sorbo?
No, the Disney one with the animated.
Gotcha.
The animated TV
Yes,
show
yes,
version
Spin-off
of
TV
it.
show of,
Yeah.
the,
Of
of the
Hercules,
film,
yeah.
animated film. Yeah.
Kevin Sorbo's like, I don't know any David Hemmingson. Me and my best friend Xena don't remember him at all. Okay, too many references to old stuff in this. We're off to a terrible start.
I don't know. I feel that it's actually pretty on point.
I do too.
It is actually on brand for a film that is set in the 1970s.
If you
Yeah.
watch
Shot
this
like
movie,
it's from the 70s.
Dude, everything about
Yeah.
that intro, like when the intro was going on, I was like, oh man, this feels great.
so much trivia.
I am
on all
so-
of it.
there's some really
Yeah.
fun, like just like if you're familiar with like movie history.
Oh yeah.
Like there's some fun stuff.
Well, at the front, you got the copy of the MCM XII. It's like
Yeah.
if you look, it's the year 1970.
Yeah, it's done as if it was
Well,
filmed.
even then, like, because this was before they changed the rules to where you had to have pretty much the full credits before
Oh, yeah.
the
Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
and they still did that.
They
like,
did it.
It's great.
And then they also they referenced the Motion Picture Association of America, the MPAA. Before now, it's just the MPA.
Yeah.
Like so, everything they did was intentional. In
Yeah.
that. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, give us a synopsis. Well,
So
no, you already did.
I did, yeah.
Gave us a
Yeah,
synopsis.
We're past that. We're on to the music. Mark Orton did the music. This movie is what he's done, and nothing else I've ever heard of. I looked through his entire IMDb, and I was like, I don't know.
Well,
any
now
of
to be
this.
fair, there's a lot of soundtracks in here.
There is.
Yes.
So it's like that does kind of lift up a lot of like what the music is. And the music's really good.
Yeah.
And the background tracks are fantastic.
Like the selections for the music they play is great.
Yes.
The background stuff is great. Like, the sound's great.
Yeah. So starring in this movie, we got Paul Giamatti. We have Dominic Sessa, who is or Sessa. It's Sessa.
he's like brand new.
He's the kid. This is his first
Fresh.
role.
Yeah.
He's done some theater before this, but this
Yeah, but
is
this
his
was
first.
like- yeah.
He literally did theater at Deerfield Academy, which,
Yeah.
as far as I know, that's like a high school, basically.
It is, and it's like some of the it's they didn't shoot at Deerfield.
They
for
shot
this.
some of it there.
Some of it, but they the founding date. There's something about this fictional school that is like tied together.
They say it was founded the same year that I think Deerfield
yeah,
is.
yeah. And then Divine Joy Randolph is in this also. That's your big three. Box office was 20 million domestic, 19 million international, so like 39 million total. Budget, I could only find one source, and it wasn't what I would call a 100%
Reputable,
credible.
yeah.
Bunch of
But
pop-up ads.
allegedly, they're reporting $200,000.
There is no way.
No way.
Now, I will say, in their defense, they didn't shoot anything on a soundstage.
Nope.
Everything was shot.
Everything was shot on location.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can definitely tell.
Yeah. And, like,
And-
it's not like they have to do like what, a bunch of VFX, but fix it in post, you know.
Well, and really, Paul Giamatti's the only bigger actor that
And,
like,
and it could have been a labor of love for him.
could have been.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. I saw that on that
That
website.
still feels unrealistic.
I was like, that's
does
ridiculous.
Does that actually pay to put everybody up in the hotel for 3 weeks?
When you say there's no
They
VFX
also-
shots, there are definitely VFX shots when they go into Boston.
There are.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it's not
yeah,
like
to make it like
third act
yeah.
time for a CGI slugfest.
No, yeah.
So
Gotta
to me-
destroy Boston.
just the VFX required to make it look like older Boston is probably more than $200,000.
Probably.
Right?
You would think.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know.
So, anyways, take that with a huge grain of salt. I looked at like several other web, like Wikipedia, a bunch of different articles,
I'm
and
gonna
I
Google
couldn't
this
find
right now and
anything that
find
was like,
better
I think we can
stats.
postulate
Definitive.
anywhere between 200,000 to 5 million.
sure, I think we can
Somewhere
go.
around there.
Why'd you cap it at 5? Why not 50?
Well, no, because
All
50
right.
is too much.
Of course, you buffoon. 50 is way too high.
Now the movie is 100.
Okay, so Steven, you look up that Andrew. What's your overall thoughts?
So going into this, like I remember seeing like the trailers for it in theaters back in November, I guess,
Well, it came out in October, so probably
or earlier than that.
September.
Yes, just sometime.
Yeah.
And
Oh, man.
continue.
Oh, sorry. Well, no, this is not continuing. This is me interrupting. So the first thing that pops up is the 200K that you found.
Yeah.
The very next article talks about that it was produced on a reported budget around 70 million.
70. That feels too high.
That feels way too high.
It does feel high. I'm just saying, like, while this is a little bit over,
That
all
could be
over the
marketing
place,
in that, but
Maybe.
even then, 70 million's a lot.
That is quite a bit for this movie.
I don't. Yeah, I
Sorry,
don't know.
not to sidetrack, but
So anywhere between 200,000 and
70 million.
dollars.
Somewhere in that range, this movie fell. Andrew,
I
your
hope not
overall
70
thoughts.
million.
Yeah, so going into this, whenever I saw trailers, I was like, ooh, this looks like a lot of fun because clearly like they're trying to make it look like it's shot in the 1970s. They definitely have the feel for how the trailers were constructed back then.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a really big selling point of the film because it's a very nostalgic film, especially if you have watched films even from that era or 1980s or whatever.
Yeah.
It has very much kind of like the Breakfast Club style of like filming and character drama that I think is what really made this movie shine. And the music was really good. The cinematography was fantastic. Paul Giamatti did a wonderful job.
Fantastic job.
Like just, and I can't really think of a lot of other films I've seen him in specifically to watch him.
Oh, yeah.
But like he's in a lot of stuff because I recognized him.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of movies.
He's got
and
a
TVs.
distinctive name and a distinctive face.
He's been a side character in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He was in Sideways, which was probably one of the first things he had that was like a a bigger movie that featured him as like him and Thomas Hayden
Yeah.
Church were like the two main guys.
But yeah, I feel that I see him a lot in stuff, or maybe I'm just like Mandela effect, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
He did a wonderful job in this, and the core cast of like supporting characters, particularly the younger kid,
Angus?
Dominic.
Angus.
Oh, yeah,
Dominic
Angus.
Sessa, the
Yeah.
Angus. Mr. Tully?
just did a wonderful job.
Tully?
And this
Tilly?
Tully.
Tully. That feels more correct.
Yeah. But this
Angus Tully, yeah.
Yes.
but yeah, this being his like first movie just was like incredibly impressive.
Dip into a little bit of trivia. Like the Alexander Payne didn't really want to go with Dominic, and they had like other kids, and Paul Giamatti basically went to bat and was like, "This kid is like gonna
got it.
Yeah, he's got it." So like, I think they made a huge call with going with Dominic Sessa or Sisa.
But yeah, I thought the movie was really, really good. It's a fantastic little character drama. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to have like the emotional pangs that something like Good Will Hunting kind of elicits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
some,
if it has the highs or the lows.
Yeah, it's very much one of those where like the baseline bar is very high, but it doesn't hit the highs of like a Good Will Hunting or I don't know.
What's the other Robin Williams one? Dead Poet Society?
Yeah, Dead Poet Society, you know, like those kind of films that are like really kind of like school based.
This is based set in schools. Yeah, I was trying to call it something else. Here.
No, because educational. There we go.
Well, as it kicks off, it has that kind of vibe of like,
It does.
Here's a grumpy teacher. Here's a troubled teen. They're gonna, you kind of see where the story's going. Now, where the twists and turns that happen along the way, I didn't see a lot of that coming.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and so when we're recording this right now, the Oscars have not happened yet. So this movie was nominated for Best Picture and I think maybe a couple other things here and there.
I can look it up real quick.
What's her name? Mary is up for a supporting role, I believe.
Oh, she was great too.
Yeah.
She was great. Yeah.
But so just all of our opinions whenever we're talking about this are based before the Oscars happen. So if, we say something that's completely off base based on...
Or if we're like, they were nominated and it turns out they won. Well, that
we
could
don't
happen.
So it's been nominated for Best Picture. It's been nominated for Best Actor for Paul Giamatti, Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Devine or Devine. I'm not sure how she says her name. And then, let's see, it's been nominated for... that's the only Academy Awards.
There's
some BAFTAs and Critics' Choice stuff.
Technicals or anything like that in
Probably. Let me keep
Now,
digging.
I do know look up the BAFTAs because they
screenplay.
did win
Yeah,
a bunch of awards for the BAFTAs.
Yeah, I'll check that
but yeah, so when we're recording
Best
this
editing.
before the Oscars, so don't get mad at us if our opinions are wrong or completely invalidated by
if
the
we're
time.
like, I don't think it'll win Best Picture, and then it's like,
no, I was
totally
actually,
won Best Picture.
So this is kind of where I was going. Is I think this is going to be a bit of a hot take. Is I don't think this movie should be in the running for Best Picture. Everything else it absolutely deserves, but I don't think this it didn't hit the highs that I was expecting for a Best Picture.
Grandiose enough.
Yeah,
it's such a small.
No, and it's a phenomenal film.
It's really like the scope that it's within. It's phenomenal. I just don't know if it's a grand enough scope.
I think that's kind of where
it's such a small. I mean, it covers 2 weeks.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
So, whenever I think of
tight scale,
Best Picture character drama, I think of Good Will Hunting. That is kind of like where my mind goes of like the caliber of film that I'm expecting.
Yeah,
going into
I
that.
hope it turns out Good Will Hunting didn't win.
No, I don't think it did.
It probably did. But you're talking about the emotional,
just the emotional
kind of
weight,
payoff,
that you kind of get. And this one didn't have it. It still had some good emotional moments, but not in the sense of like Waterworks.
I teared up a couple times in this movie, but I would describe the emotional stakes of this plot as more subtle. It's more of a very nuanced, like,
yeah.
Okay, this one kid's like, coming of age as this other dude's having like a mid to late life crisis.
It's a look at 3 people at different stages in their lives and just kind of the effects they each have on each other while they're in each other's orbit.
Yeah, well,
but it never fully snaps into the found family.
Yeah,
it
doesn't lock into one archetype or another. Really.
No,
it does. Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think this movie was absolutely phenomenal. I just don't think it hits that heights of what I expect from like a Best Picture.
I think ultimately it's very nuanced. But because it doesn't pick one lane and just go 100 miles an hour in that lane, it doesn't ramp off into that. So it just kind of meanders like life does, right?
So at the BAFTAs, this movie won for Best Supporting Actress for Divine Joy Randolph, and then Best Casting.
Okay.
which I guess is a BAFTA award.
I mean, if you cast the best supporting actress, I mean, like you're doing
gotta
pretty
win it,
good.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah, so, obviously, like, by the time you're listening to this, they could have already won Best Picture, and, we're just talking now.
could be wrong.
It's whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be wrong.
I'm gonna take the opposite tack. So this won Best Picture. So they brought out.
Steven says, I guarantee
we're
this
gonna
wins
hedge. We're gonna hedge our bets here.
One of us will be
Don't
right.
put it all on black. Put half on black and half on red. How can you lose?
And I'll say it might win. It's me.
Well, now, obviously, we haven't seen every other movie that's up for Best Picture right now. There's not enough time.
This was the film that we all looked at when we looked at the list. We said, hey, we're going to do something. Let's do something that's nominated for Oscars.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
And this was one that we all three of us were like, this looks appealing.
Yeah.
So like, well, let's do it, you know?
What did you think, Steven?
So, one, I will say this. I understand where it's getting kind of like Oscar buzz.
Absolutely.
This has definitely felt like that type of film. I will say from what I had seen of the trailers just before other films, et cetera, when we were talking about this film, we were like, yeah, it was nominated for Best Picture. Like in the back of my mind, I was thinking about the trailer. And I was like, the trailer just feels like hijinks. How is this nominated? And then as the movie's going, oh, okay, this is why it's not. Oh, yeah, okay, this is way more serious than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It was good. I enjoyed it quite a lot, both for the stylings, like the way that they really encapsulated that era. Although I will say, for any of you who decide to stream this at home, I put mine on and it was running, and like the opening credits ran. I was like, oh man, this is like dead on for that kind of era. And I was looking at the screen, and I was like, this doesn't feel like the film simulation. I was like, you know what? Bring up my settings. I bet motion smoothing turned itself on at some point. Yeah, it did. Turn that sucker off, and it feels way better.
A pro tip for everyone at home with
Turn
the
off
newer.
motion smoothing forever.
Well, no. So the problem you have with a lot of modern TVs is motion smoothing is on a per input per app basis.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
like I had to
sometimes
turn off
it'll-
motion smoothing on every single app that I download. But yes,
He spent 6 hours one day doing it.
I
it was probably
wouldn't doubt
5.
it.
Yeah.
And then he went and he's like, I'm going to watch this tonight. I was like, no, I missed one. No.
No, the worst though is you download a new
As he
app.
burns his house down.
It's unsalvageable, honey.
gasoline out of the garage.
Hand me more matches, I said.
Can't fix this one.
So I loved this movie. I thought it was really good. I agree with you though, Andrew, that I don't think that it should. I don't mind it being nominated,
No.
but I don't think it'll win.
I don't think it'll
necessarily.
win.
Yeah.
It spent, and again, not as a bad thing, but it spent so much time kind of exploring all three stages of life, essentially.
Yeah.
That it didn't really ever lock onto one individual and like hammer that down and say, this is the main character, these are the support. Like calling Paul Giamatti the main character is believable, but also not believable in a way. Like this is three supporting actors.
It's three supporting actors supporting each other.
Right, yeah. It's very much so acting by committee here kind of maneuver.
Yeah.
Or storytelling by committee. So it just doesn't ever pick one of those lanes and really like hammer down on the emotions on you.
So we can even just go back 1 year at this point and look at Everything Everywhere All at Once, winning Best Picture, and then if you try and compare just the emotional stakes and the emotional weight that each of these films had, it's just a different.
It's not close. Yeah,
it's not close in that sense, and I don't think that you don't need to compare it that way. It's just it's one of those where
it's kind of apples and oranges.
It is
because it's approaching like relationships and
loss.
Emotions and loss in a different way entirely.
Well, it's also there's far more at stake in these relationships. Like the relationships that we have here in at what is it, Barton Academy?
Yeah, Barton.
Is they're transient, right? They're only going to happen for so long. You know, kids graduate, whatever. People just move on. It's the reality of life. People move on.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll absolutely say too is I loved the witty banter, or not even banter. It's just like the dialogue that happens between Angus and Paul.
His
name is Paul.
That throws me every time I think about it.
Paul Hunnam.
Dean was like, so, Paul. And I was like, wait, hold on. This is what they do for actors who can't figure out what their name's supposed to be. I know Giamatti's better than this.
But so between Angus and Paul, the dialogue that they have is so witty and snappy.
Yeah,
So good.
well, that's why I was surprised that the writer. This is his first film, really. So he's only done TV. Because I was like, man, and because also it's not just snappy between the two of them, and you get the whole like the antagonistic relationship at the front, and then like when they kind of begrudgingly start to like each other. But it's the the believability of their words too.
Yes.
Yeah,
like
it's
they're
very
not
real.
Yeah, like it feels like these characters feel real. They feel like they could be somebody. But yeah, so I thought it was great. I loved the just the aesthetics and the links that they went to in the production to make it look like it was.
The look and
It
feel
was
of
shot
this
with
film
film.
is
Yeah,
so
it wasn't,
good.
Yeah, so the Alexander Payne, the director, his whole thing was, he said when you look at movies like Boogie Nights and a lot of other movies that are modern movies set in the 70s, he goes, they get the sets right, they get the outfits right, they
don't
get the
get the
cars right.
feel.
He goes, but they use modern moving
And it's like
techniques.
perfect movie
And so
techniques.
he was like, we shot mostly on tripods. We did those long, like 2 to 3 second dissolves.
Oh, I was actually about to bring that
Yeah.
up. There was like a 4 or 5 second transfer dissolve, and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah. And so he's like, that's just not popular now. But when you look back at like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and like some other Jack Nicholson movies of that early 70s, like The Shining, and there's one other one that he used as a specific reference that I've never seen. But Jack Nicholson plays like a sailor, like a service member. But they showed an example of it, and it's like, it's got that long cross dissolve. But I loved them. I was eating them up. I was like, this is great. Because it felt like they also added the I can't think of the technical term for it, the gate warping, where like in the film gate, like you see the text kind of bounces and like the screen, they did that a little bit on some
jitter,
shots. And I was like, I love this. I'm the nerd for that kind of stuff.
It felt like a time capsule.
It did.
In a sense of almost like, we unearthed this pristine film that was made back in the 70s. Right. And you watch it and you're like, man, this could be a film made in the 70s.
Well,
Well, that was his thing, was he was like, I wanted it to feel like this was a lost movie that someone made in 1970, and then they just found the footage.
The Blair Witch of Oscar nods right here.
So would you recommend it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a fantastic character drama. There's a really good message on a couple of different levels of, I'll say, the loss of a loved one. In one, it's, the loss of life, obviously. Then you have like the loss of a loved one, but they're still alive.
Yeah.
And then you also have kind of the essentially the endless march of time and kind of the lost opportunities that you've had.
The loss of self, in a sense. You've missed out on all these things that you could have done, and now you're old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And it does a fantastic job of tackling all of those in a tactful way that does have a good emotional core throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too the balance it has of like none of the characters ever get too cynical.
Yeah.
Like they're definitely cynical and they're all three going through, some terrible stuff. But yeah, for me, like especially if you like Paul Giamatti or if you like, movies from the early 70s, I would definitely recommend it. It has that vibe.
Yeah,
It does.
You got to go in wanting a good, solid, nuanced character drama.
Yeah.
Like this isn't going to be a laugh out loud comedy. It's got funny moments. It's not going to have the best, it doesn't have the most satisfying ending in a lot of ways. Like it's not the most catharsis of a moment, but it feels so real. It's ridiculous. I don't know. That may just be me becoming an old man talking. Like, oh yeah, this is what films are like,
Don't be left out alone just in this wilderness of life. Come and join us at spoilersintendedpodcast.com, and we can be your found family. You can listen to...
Is this a cult? Are we making a cult?
Don't question it. Leave all your belongings. Come to spoilersintendedpodcast.com.
But on the website, we have links to our Discord, our Patreon, our social media accounts. You should join us.
Yes, join us on Discord. We talk about episodes we've reviewed. We talk about things we haven't reviewed. We talk about our hobbies, what we're playing video game wise, what our pets are doing, what we're cooking. It's a great time. Come check us out on Discord.
You should also join us on Facebook and join us on Instagram. Check it out. We have posts there every week. What's coming out this week, what's coming out for the month, some behind the scenes, some other stuff out there. You should definitely check it out. Follow us, leave us a like.
And we are not a cult.
That is just what a cult would say.
That's for the lawyers. That's for the All right, and that means we are past the spoiler wall. So turn back now if you don't want to be spoiled about the Holdovers.
That song has like the perfect vibe of like
super
that,
chill.
that mellow, but
I love
also
that
a little
song.
melancholy to it. Ugh.
That's called Candlepin Bowling.
You have the you have the snow falling around the evergreen trees.
So apparently, when they started filming, like they got a snowstorm, and they're like, "Heck yeah!" That's probably why it was so cheap to make. Because like, "Heck yeah, we don't have to make fake snow."
Well, there's something very romantic about, I'll say, like a college campus or a larger, like kind of like boarding school style campus that under the snow.
That insular community where you're separated from the world,
Yeah.
and then the snow hits, and like, oh gosh.
Yeah, there's just something. I love that visual.
Every kid that grew up with Harry Potter is just like, yeah.
I can't imagine this movie without that vibe of the snow. So jumping into trivia.
Let's go.
Many of the scenes were filmed at Fairhaven High School in Fairhaven, Massachusetts in February 2022 during the school's February break. At this time, the area received a snowstorm to the delight of the film crew since many of the scenes took place during a snowstorm.
Yep.
So they took full advantage of the weather, and the snow you see in the film was all from an actual snowstorm. So anytime it's snowing, that's actually happening.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah,
Right?
seriously. You couldn't have asked for a better snowstorm.
And so, we said it earlier, this entire film was shot in real practical locations, no sets or sound stages were used. And we've reviewed a few movies that have done that, and I think you can tell the difference a lot of times. Like,
It shows.
it's subtle, but you feel it.
Yeah, I mean, like 1917 is a good example of that.
Well, it's those moments when you can tell that the camera is just like, oh, you can't pan that way because there's nothing over there. It's just like, hey, I can put this anywhere I want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you have a small crew, like what I'm assuming this did, to where you can have, I'm not even gonna say dynamic shots, but just wider, more open kind of experiences.
Well, and you also have kind of the scenes that are lit just by like the ambient light of the scene. Like you have the bits where Paul is going around with the flashlight, and then later you have Angus going around with the flashlight. Like those scenes, those are great. Like those don't work on a sound. They work so much better in a real location.
Yeah, for sure. So, we touched a little bit on, the links they went to make it look like it was, in the 70s. So they shot it digitally, but they, in an effort to really, really drill down on the 70s look, cinematographer, I'm going to butcher this name.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Iger Brild. He wanted to shoot it on film originally, but because of the specific stock they were looking for, it was just not available. Probably would have been very expensive.
Yeah, I was going to say it would have been very expensive.
Ramped up the budget real fast.
But so he worked extensively with colorist Joe Gawler. And the reason he did is because Joe Gawler is mostly known for film restoration for the Criterion Collection stuff.
Oh, that's so cool.
So he is an expert in the way film negatives age over time.
Oh, what a good pull for a colorist, man.
Yeah, based on his discussions, Brild put together a lookup table to help him color grade the Holdovers like an aged film negative from the 70s.
Wow.
So that it looks like an old
it pays off.
Little kind of like muted colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just everything about, and when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, the film nerd in me is like, oh.
So that's the kind of look that when I like go out with a modern digital camera and take a photo and then I apply that look to it, I just feel like such a poser.
I know.
Why am I doing this? Like, this is terrible.
So I mean, that actually does kind of work because you do have instant photos still now, like Instax, mini Instax,
or
whatever,
like
Polaroids, whatever.
Polaroid,
But those still have that same kind of like. I'm not going to say flat color because they're still very vibrant, but they have like a certain level of like everything is kind of pushed together.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. And like, that's why they're still really popular. I sell Instax on the shop. Like they're great.
Yeah. They have a specific look to them. And it's like, it's what people want.
That retro vibe is so hot right now.
Yeah.
It was so hot back then too.
It's still hot.
It never went away. All right, a couple more pieces of trivia, then we'll get into our spoiler-filled thoughts. The effect of Paul Hunnam's lazy eye was achieved with an opaque contact lens.
Yeah, so he was blind in one eye the whole time he was filming.
So basically, it was so convincing that several of Paul Giamatti's childhood friends thought that something was wrong with his eye, like something had happened.
It's like one of the best prosthetics I've ever seen, just for like that kind of effect.
Well,
yeah,
I read something where like they did it. He initially did it as a gag to Sisa.
Yeah,
I've forgotten his first name.
And then they loved it so much they just kept it.
Well,
they worked it into the script.
And for the longest time, up until like past couple of weeks, they've kept it under wraps of how it actually was done.
So even from CISA, because he did an interview I saw where he was talking, they were like, how did he goes, I don't know. He was like, we would be in a take and his eye is doing that. And then I would go over to craft services and Paul would come up to me and his eye is fine. I don't know what they're doing. And so I thought that was pretty funny that like even on set, they were trying to keep it,
which is, I think that's really, really cool. I don't know why they wanted to keep it such a secret.
I don't know either.
They're having fun with it.
Yeah, having fun with it.
So this one's kind of like fun because once you know like the dynamic they have, Dominic Cisa says he was nervous about hanging out with Paul Giamatti outside of filming.
I could see that.
But that he was very nice and easygoing guy with a great sense of humor and said they're both huge fans of animated TV shows and would just watch them during filming breaks together.
Ooh. Did they say what shows?
Didn't get into what shows.
Andrew's like, I need to
know. This is information that must
Give it to me.
Paul, come on, Paul. We got to flex for you.
Is it Cardcaptor Sakura? It's got to be Paul Giamatti's a huge Cardcaptor Sakura.
They're watching pounded out Neo Genesis Evangelion.
I mean, that's fine too.
Could be. So last piece of trivia here, Divine Joy Randolph, a non-smoker, found that smoking fake cigarettes looked unrealistic. So she opted to smoke real cigarettes on screen for the role while being very sensitive to not becoming addicted to nicotine. So she decided on American Spirit as the brand that she disliked the most and could quit as easily as possible after filming Wrapped.
That's incredible, actually.
Sorry, American Spirit, you have rot gut cigarettes.
The effect of smoking on screen was so good that while we were watching this, my wife was like, they're not using fake cigarettes. That's a real cigarette.
That's a real cigarette.
Yeah. And like it, again, when we're going for, hey, this is the 70s.
Yeah.
It's
that's what it was.
Ashtrays on the table in the restaurant.
Yep.
I'm smoking between bites,
Yeah. It was honestly like the commit to the bit.
Right.
Was impressive all the way around.
Across the board.
Yeah. And when I say like I loved this movie, I would never say this is like one of my favorite movies of all time. But I love this movie because it literally set out to do exactly what it did exactly what it set out to.
It knew what it wanted to be, and when it got there, it wallowed in it.
And it committed so because it also even in there the dialogue, the editing, the lighting, the film look,
the costuming, the cars,
everything
the dead on
pace of the movie is a little slower because like the 70s dramas and things from that era,
a little slow.
They took their time with stuff. This is before we had to have, and like some of the 1-star reviews I didn't pick were like, man, this movie takes forever to get going. The opening credits are like 8 minutes long, and it's like that's just what movies were.
That's just what they were. You had an overture and you watched all the credits.
Man, I tell you.
Yeah. So what did you guys think?
Facebook has ruined children.
Yeah, it really has.
You left out one of my favorite pieces of trivia.
I had more. I just didn't want to continue to waller in it.
Well, but again, we're talking about like
this is spoilers trivia intended.
Yes.
STI.
What's your favorite part?
Well, so kind of weighing in on that commitment to the 70s and like the difference in eras, right? So for us, this seems totally natural to dial a rotary phone.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I have that one in here.
But Dominic failed the first take when he calls home trying to reach his mom because he walked up to the telephone and was just like, what do I do with this thing?
Yeah.
What am I? So they had to like sit him down and teach him how it works.
That's
so he could
incredible.
actually dial the phone.
As a true teenager in 2022, it'd be like, I don't even.
What am I supposed to do?
What I do?
Which end of this is the phone?
Because like for us growing up, the films we were watching, they all had rotary phones.
My grandmother had a rotary phone.
We had a rotary phone.
Yeah, we had
Until,
rotary
like,
phones too.
5 years ago. I would still use that thing. It was so satisfying to hang
really
up on
is.
somebody. It was metal. And it was in a concrete wall in the basement.
Oh,
Man,
yeah, you slam that thing.
If a bomb went off, that phone would still be there. The house would be in shambles.
Fallout 6, you're in there putting in a bottle cap to dial on it.
Like, in older films, whenever someone has to defend themselves, they'll hit someone with the phone.
Oh, and that's a viable.
brick.
Oh, yeah, that's like
It's attempted murder. What are you doing?
But yeah, the feeling of the rotary, the clack, clack.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so to the emotional climaxes of this movie, right, where he gets to the twist that his father's not dead.
Yeah.
He's in a
mental hospital.
Sanitarium.
I didn't really see that coming. Like when he snuck away, I kept thinking, what's he from the movies?
What's he trying to do?
I was like, what's he trying to do? Is he trying to ditch this guy?
Yeah, because at this point you're like, well, I don't think he's trying to ditch him,
right?
Because like they're having, like, I'll say, a good time, good enough as you can.
It had developed to them having a good time.
When that happened, I was like, oh, come on now, film, don't revert back here. Like we moved past this point.
Because whenever he was leaving the movie theater, I was like, oh, come on, don't revert.
Yeah,
Like,
but he didn't, which I'm very glad. That's the way the
Yes.
script went. But yeah, like then the scene with his dad, and he's telling him, and his dad like leans in, and that heartbreaking moment of just like
holds his hands like it's gonna be like this big heart to heart moment. He's like,
and
I think
they're putting stuff in my food.
Yeah. And that's definitely probably the most emotional part of the film.
So for me, the most emotional part was when Mary has the breakdown at the party.
Because when he closes the door to the kitchen, I'm like, ooh.
It hit me hard because it was like I think I had this fleeting, I'm talking like millisecond response of like, what's her deal? Mm-hmm. Oh, this is the first Christmas without her son.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the timeline of events and like the context caught up to me quick.
Piled up on her and just comes crashing down.
And when it did, it hit me. I was tearing up. I was like, oh no, her baby. And then like they're standing around and they're like trying to help, but then like that whole scene, I was like, Divine was doing some work in that scene.
Oh, she was.
Yeah.
She was doing some hard work
and then,
there.
and it shows a paramount to her character in the film is that, the second that they get out of the thing, she has a little bit of a minute to kind of recuperate.
Yeah.
Then she's back to, her strong self and, kind of pushing them around.
Well, she puts. I don't remember what
she
the
puts
line.
Paul in his place.
Also, there's a line there where Angus says something and Paul snaps back at him, and then she just like comes down on Paul.
Yeah.
He basically acts like he doesn't want the kid around.
Yeah.
And then she's like, you don't tell a kid
on Christmas Eve
who lost his father,
Yeah.
doesn't have anywhere to go on Christmas Eve, that you don't want him around.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? She used colorful language that I can't use on the podcast.
That we don't use on the podcast. So I really liked, speaking of the party scene.
Yeah.
I really liked it just because of it's the microcosm of their three kind of parallel stories.
Yes.
Where for Mary, right? We're ignoring the emotional issue she has currently with the loss of her son. But in terms of if she wants a relationship, Danny's there, but she's not ready for it.
She's not ready. Yeah.
Paul is starting to think maybe I'm interested in, and then it turns out, hey, the girl I was looking
that was
at,
such a bad rug pull. I was so mad at that girl.
Miss Lydia Crane.
She's just very nice. She's taken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas you have Angus, where Angus is like, hey, like I could go somewhere with this girl.
Yeah.
But I thought that whole sequence at the party where it's very much so like three different outlooks on life, three different points in their lives of like what do they expect, what is going to happen in terms of relationships. Because I did kind of wonder, like, if I'm rooting for Paul with Lydia here, but like if that happens, like this gets very kind of trite.
It does.
And almost predictable.
It does, yeah.
So I think swerving away from some of those,
the common tropes.
Story building blocks that you would expect makes this a more unique film.
But also, like, and I think this is where, the discussion goes further of like, if it had done some more of those tropey style things, but done them slightly differently, I think it would have veered closer to like a Good Will Hunting, where like you have that catharsis,
well, that's the other
satisfying
thing is
arc.
you don't get the catharsis because you don't get that kind of payoff. Like you get a form of payoff, but it's a very open ended.
Yeah, well, and the payoff at the end of the film is really good. Like you do get a little bit of him telling off his older student that is now the dean of the
boss.
My favorite line in the movie. He says to Dean Woodrup, I've known you my entire life. You have always been and will continue to be penis cancer in human form.
Yeah.
And then he just walks out. I was like, yes.
and that's kind of one of those moments in the film where you're like, he's getting fired for this. He's got nothing to lose now.
He's already gone.
And I was kind of like, well, that's kind of a downer ending. And then I realized that, when he was packing up and he was like, well, I'm just going to start in, X, country
Carthage,
and then
Carthage.
just go. And I'm like, there we go. This is what I want out of this character. Because
literally this school has almost been holding him back. From doing like what he needed to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, and his general mentality is because every single opportunity that he had, he always inserted some form of ancient history or something like that. You're like, come on, dude. Like, this is your thing. go to the places that you're talking about.
But then even Mary gets a really good happy ending. You get to see her reconnect with her sister, and she brings that box, and you're like, "What's in this box?" And it's her
like,
son's
all the
baby stuff. She's giving it to her
That was
sister.
actually a pretty emotional moment.
I love that when they drop her off at her sister's and they get her in, that the door didn't just close, and then later
you still get some cutaways.
We don't just see her show up later, and she's like, "Oh, I had a great visit."
Yeah,
like what a cop out, right?
Oh,
right.
The bit where the two of them are sitting on the couch, like jawing away at each other, and her sister's husband walks by and kind of rolls his eyes and keeps going. It's like, this is perfect. This is just like two sisters just having their time, you know?
That was also one of my favorite long cross-dissolve transitions because it goes from the same room at a different angle to that same room later that night, and it's showing that time has passed and they're still catching up, and the subtlety of the husband just looking in and being like, still talking. But then at the end when she's talking about the college fund for her nephew, it's like, I just love that her arc gets as satisfying of an ending as both Angus and Paul's, because
and that, like, her sister's putting, Curtis is the baby's middle name,
right?
If it was a boy,
right.
Well, it's the 70s, you don't know.
And even with Angus, like, as bittersweet as it is that his actions got Paul fired, I keep wanting to be like, what's his character name? Because it can't be Paul.
No, that's what
it can't be Paul. Got Paul fired, but it's still like, Angus as a person grew so much over this experience.
Because then, like, that's obviously that's the whole point of Paul's arc, is that he's willing to fall on his sword for just a kid, not his kid, it's just a kid that he happened to connect with, and he sees the potential in him.
He falls on the sword for his student.
Yeah, I mean, sure,
and
but
that's as close to it. It's not just some random kid on a sidewalk. Right?
No,
it's close to, but like, there's more of a relationship.
But
there.
I mean, as far as he was concerned at the beginning of the film, it was just a student, like just a kid.
Oh, man, he was the star student of that class. The only B on the paper. Dude, when those papers are coming down, man, I had some teachers like that in high school who just be like, "There is no curve. The curve is."
You all fail.
If you fail, you fail. Swim or die.
And that one kid's like, I can't fail this. Oh, don't sell yourself short. I think you absolutely can fail this.
Those lines were so good.
So I think my favorite Paul tirade, though, was when they're at the restaurant at the end in Boston, and he goes on this fascist tirade about
the Cherries Jubilee.
Because it has bourbon
Well,
in
I'll
it.
just order it. I can't do that. Okay, and then they get it all to go, and they set it on fire in the parking lot, and it falls off the back of the car.
That whole little bit is such a good little moment of the good intentions, obviously there, and then they're just like, well, we don't know what we're doing.
How much did you put on that?
Mary's bit where she's like, well, you have cherries, right? Yes. You have ice cream, right? Yes. Good. We'll take cherries and ice cream to go, please. And then she walks through and she's like, that.
There's some really good one-liners in this film.
Oh, man.
Yeah. To me, talking about like the big emotional pops, and like bawling your eyes out stuff. I feel like it's like 1,000 tiny moments. You know what I mean?
It is, yeah. Like, well, so like even we haven't even talked about any of the students that get held over, but then they get to
helicoptered out.
Helicopter.
So all those kids were great too, and I think.
So I was actually almost a little disappointed because, like, again, the trailer doesn't give you a whole lot of idea. Like, you're pretty certain it's going to be Paul and Angus.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we're going to have a group.
We're going to have like a group here.
Yeah.
And like there were some good interactions with Angus and the Mormon kid whose name I forget, and then
his name is Alex,
and then the Korean kid when he like
Yejun Park.
I knew his last name was Park.
Yeah.
But like when he like wakes up in the middle of the night, like there was a good moment there with him and Angus where it was like.
Right.
Like he's still not a bad. Like he's not. Angus isn't a bad
kid.
guy.
That's one of your earliest looks at the fact that he's genuinely not a bad kid.
He's just he's very cynical, and he has a very heavy wall up in front of him.
Yeah,
because of past trauma with his dad and his mom.
Well, you see his terrible mom and stepdad later, and you're like, no wonder the kid's got walls up.
Right?
Like, Jeez.
But like then the kind of the scuffle between him and his classmate, I can't remember, Rocky
Kuntz. His name is Kuntz.
Yeah. Kuntz.
It's real close to something else.
Yeah. Well, that kid needs to be punched in the face. But
That kid's way too short to be bowing up to Angus like
well,
that.
no, that's the
You're
thing,
not
though. I mean,
big,
like
dude.
that's kind of one of those interactions where, like, I had a frenemy when I was in high school that was very similar to where he was shorter than I was, and I was just, you know, a tall kid, and like we were essentially in the same friends group and stuff, but we never really got along in any kind of form or fashion, and we never came to blows or anything. But it's definitely one of those where, like, if we wanted to, we knew ways to get under each other's skin in the most annoying possible way ever.
Yeah.
And it was it's always a back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, I think they nailed that. And to your point, like, I was almost a little disappointed too when they whisked the other kids away onto the ski trip to the quarterback kid. I can't think of his name.
Well, I liked him. I liked
Yeah.
him too. Where he's like, so like, why are you a holder? Oh, because I won't cut my hair. Like, what?
What? Yeah.
It's a contest of wills between me and my dad.
Yeah.
And then like,
you see him at the end with the shaved head.
Well, I just love when the phone rings and like he lifts his chin up when the chopper flies, he lifts his chin up. He's like, softy. It's like, oh man, like this is such a cool relationship here. And then of course we don't really explore it. Yeah.
But I am glad that they remove every other element and
You
be
really
Paul and
want
Angus.
to drill down on the three. What we get is the three main characters,
and it does
their
such a good job at that early section when everyone's there is building up all three of these other characters and their general stance of where they stand with other people, and then you put them all three together just by themselves, and it turns into a whole different dynamic.
Oh, one of my favorite Paul go off moments is when Kuntz is like complaining about her cooking, and he just snaps,
slams it down.
I was like, yes.
You tell that snot-nosed kid.
I know. Say more. Make him feel worse.
Yeah.
But then she tells him later, I hear everything.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, oh, okay. She knows he's like a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so would you rewatch it?
Absolutely. I don't know if I'd rewatch it like
Soon.
like you know, maybe in a couple years.
Yeah.
But because it's just an emotional film. Like, I don't watch Good Will Hunting every year.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a pop it on anytime. I would rewatch it if so. My wife and I, you know, I was telling her we were going to watch it for the review, and I showed her the trailer. And like the night we were going to watch it, she had to get up super early the next day, so she went to bed. But if she wanted to rewatch it like this weekend or next week, I would rewatch it with her, no problem. Like it would not be like I just saw it.
Yeah.
But if I'm on my own, I would probably every couple years.
Every couple years.
Yeah. There are some people that are saying this is going to be like in their Christmas movie rotation because
I mean,
for us, we're watching it now.
Over Christmas.
And
Yeah.
it takes place over Christmas, and it came out around October. But director, what's his name? Alexander Payne.
Paul Alexander
hates this. He's like, this is not a Christmas movie.
This is not a feel-good Christmas movie.
This is not supposed to be this. And people are like, you can't tell me how to feel about your movie. What about you, Steven? Would you rewatch it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of in the same boat with y'all. You know, when you're in the right mood for this aesthetic or this vibe, I think this film's going to hit real well.
Yeah. Just like a good character-driven story.
Well, and just it's the aesthetic and the mood. I will say the soundtrack is
killer.
Definitely going to make it into a listing rotation for me.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
There are some killer songs on that soundtrack.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about our Patreon.
For just $1.
$1.
This is the
Why
most.
did you say it like that?
$1.
It's 1970. $1 will buy you a whole chicken.
Is it a Costco chicken?
Costco.
It's a live chicken.
Probably not.
But for $1, this is the most direct way you can support the show. If you love what you're hearing here and you want to help us pay hosting fees, keep the lights on, this is the best way to do it. And what you get in return is a whole lot for just $1 or more. You can always support with more.
Yeah.
So we have a whole library of bonus episodes and commentaries and Patreon picks polls that you can do. But the bonus episodes are honestly my favorite part.
Yeah.
We fight presidents. We talk to ChatGPT to give us relationship advice. It's never a good idea.
No, we gave ChatGPT.
Oh, you're right.
relationship
Yes.
advice.
Well, in March,
Also,
right
not a
now,
good idea.
In March, we have the March Madness at the movies bracket, where we basically took any movie that come out in March. Well, a lot of movies that came out in March. We seeded a bracket, and then we
just hashed it
Put
out.
Put them
it
head to
out.
head. There are some wild
matchups because a lot of varying movies have come out in March. Okay, but that sounds about like all the time we have. So as always, follow us on social, leave us a review wherever you're listening now, and share us with a friend. Until next time, I'm Ryan.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Steven.
And every spoiler was intended.